what started out looking like a big lump of mashed potato into what now hopefully looks a little bit more like a slice of Welsh countryside. Hi there everyone, welcome back to Project 009, and this is what a lot of people have dubbed Potato Mountain, and I'm actually going to get the Welsh for that, and that's probably going to be the layout name. But today we're back on the build, and this is where we're going to start doing the ground cover. And what I want to do in this video is finish off those cast rocks that we did right at the end of last week's episode, and then we're going to go on and we're going to be doing the basic ground cover. So this involves painting out the plaster where we've got bare white plaster. Going to go over that with some brown household emulsion, and then we're going to build up layers of sand, scatter, foliage, and build up until we're applying static grass, and hopefully it really is going to transform this model. But I'm really looking forward to showing you this. So come with me in association with the sponsor Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. So come with me, let's get started. If you remember last week, we did make some great progress. So this week, what I really want to do is to build on that and start the ground cover. We've allowed a full week for all the things like ballast to dry, and I'm really looking forward to doing this. And I'm going to be showing you some techniques involving some fine kiln dried sand. We're also going to test out some products from Gagemaster and Noch, War World Scenics, and of course Woodland Scenics as well. And I'm going to take you through this step by step so you too can learn the techniques and secrets of doing this. So this is the paint that we've got. It's just cheap household brown emulsion, and all I'm going to be doing is painting out the bits where we did the plaster. Where we did the actual filler layer, I already put some brown paint into the mix, so I'm quite happy with that. It's going to disappear underneath all of the scenery, but I just want to mute out some of this, and I've got some water here as well. So I'm going to thin it down. You don't really want it going on too thick. This just takes away that kind of angriness of the white. And now a lot of this process, you don't need to wait for things to dry in between. It's a technique that I learned from Les Cliff in the main. He's a great proponent of techniques where you can just go in and work the different materials whilst they're wet, and they blend together and give you a really great kind of finish. So we're going to be doing a degree of that, and we're just almost messily getting that angry white to just mute down. Now this area down here I'm not as bothered by. I'm just going to do the top because I'm going to be using a grass matte product which I do quite like from the Gagemaster and Noch range, and that's going to actually cover up most of that. And because the steepness of this side, you wouldn't easily be able to get grass onto that. It just really is quite difficult to do, and that's where the product that I've chosen really does come into its own. But I will do the top across here because that's where we might get some show through at the side. And this is actually a really easy job. You don't need to have any great skill to get the effect that you want with any of this. We've got that paint done, and it's just a case of slapping it on. Quite a bit of water in there. It doesn't matter if you water it down, but it's just really muted that white away. And whilst that's still wet, we don't need to leave it to dry. I've mixed up a mix of PVA diluted right down with water, and I've just used any old spray bottle that you can find lying around the house. When they go empty, they are a great modelling tool, and you will go through them. The mechanisms do tend to gum up quite quickly, so always keep those empty spray bottles for model rail purposes. I'm just going to wet as much of this area as I can, and then I'm going to use this fine kiln dried paving sand, and it's what you'd actually buy to go between the block paving on a block paving drive, and it just keys those together. But it's perfect for modelling purposes, and it's actually quite cheap as well. It's less than £5 for a 10-kilo bag, so it also goes an incredibly long way. But I'm going to start off now, and as you can see, you just got to build up this glue mix. We even go over all the area that we've just painted. I'm going to take a largish area here because the whole layout will need doing, and this is just a reasonable way of getting it all done. You can take your time if you want, only take on an area that you're happy to be dealing with, and if you need to, you get a little brush and just help to move that PVA mix around. So we've got the fine kiln dried sand, and just very, very carefully start to sprinkle that onto the terrain. And this is building up a kind of earthy layer. And you can also use it around places like where we've got this Scenecraft building, just to fill in any gaps around the edge, because the glue will kind of set it and you just lose these hard edges. We're going to just dribble some more in down here, the waterfall area as well, and we just go over the full layout with this. You don't need it really thick, otherwise it's just not going to look quite right, but it is going to just give us the texture that we want. And where you get steep vertical faces like this, put a little bit of sand in your hand and just blow. And there you have it. And you can see how it starts to look a little bit more earthy. The sand layer is now on. It's all in there. It's all quite wet. Just make sure you don't have any dry spots. Just keep spraying over with some of that diluted PVA. Now, once that's all in place, again, you don't need to wait for any of this to dry. You just keep on putting layer after layer after layer onto this. And what I'm going to pick now is some of the base level scatters. Now I've got some brown scatter, and I've also got some kind of wild meadow scatter, and I'm going to use combinations of these on the model, just sprinkling it around. I'm going to add a bit more of that diluted PVA and just build up the base layer of the ground, and that will then give us a really good basis to add in the static grass. So I'm going to get and I'm going to do that. I've also got some of this product from Warworld Scenics, which is the forest ground cover. You might remember this from some of the other projects, and I'm going to use this in areas where I'm going to ultimately be adding trees to the model, and this gives you that detritus that's quite common underneath copses of trees. And again, we just fasten it all in place with copious quantities of the diluted PVA glue. So I think I'm going to put a load of trees around this area. So again, it's just going to be a case of just getting this stuff down as a basis for the trees that will go in. And we're going to have some more around here. And texture is often just as important as colour. I do quite often say this, and it is so true, that texture does bring a lot to a model. So the next thing I'm going to be using is some of this Flockage medium brown, and it's just really a case of sprinkling this on. It'll stick to all the damp areas, start to mute things over a little bit. I'm just going to go over various places. And again, this is the layer that will largely become underneath static grass, underneath foliage. So it's not a huge issue. If you get little weird lumps and if you think the colours look a bit off, not a problem at all. And again, we're going to keep coming back. Quick movements. Don't just blast it in one position or you will dislodge stuff. You'll get a feel for using these. If you keep that stream moving, just play it across the scenery. And just get it like that. I'm going to look now to the next colour from the Noch and Gagemaster range, GM174. Again, you don't have to use a specific colour, it's just whatever you like the look of. So just cut a little bit of the corner off and then we can start sprinkling. Again, it doesn't have to be even over everything. You're just looking to create a suggestion. Again, building up the colours, the textures, and you'll see that it very quickly starts to look different, looks interesting, and most importantly, it starts to look like real terrain. And I'm just going to keep on adding these different scatters. Just sticks into the glue. And of course, we're going to secure it all again with another light blast over with the diluted PVA. What you're trying to do is you don't just blast a full spray into one spot because you'll just wash all of the scenery away. So you're doing short strokes, so you're not getting the full whack, and you're keeping that nozzle moving quite quickly so that you get that stream going over a quite broad area. And then again, we're going to come in just building up some of this scatter. And I do love scatters like this because they are multiple different colours. So you get that really nice blend straight out of the bag. Start doing a little bit more precision sprinkling now. And this is just, rather than shaking it from the bag, you're just sort of rubbing your finger and thumb to just direct the flow of the scatter. Get it right up to the ballast. And it's just a case of building it up. Do it by eye. See how it looks. You can go back to previous colours as well if you want to build up certain areas. So we're going to move back. I can pick up some of this brown flockage again. We can have a few patches. Just a few little areas where maybe we just get that working. A little bit on there, around there, a little bit on there. So we're using some different colours in different areas just to get a good look and feel. And now we've got a different shade of green, and immediately you can see those different highlights and lowlights coming together. The real world is not uniform. And if you want your model to look like the real world, you need to get that variety of colours and textures in. It's really important. I always say to people, and I probably sound like a bit of a scratched record, texture is often as important as colour. But it's true, absolutely true. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on. I'm going to tackle some of the other areas, bring up this base layer until I'm happy with it, and then we're ready to move on to the static grass. I'm going to be adding in some of this meadow mat that's from the Gagemaster Noch range, and this is actually a bit like static grass, but it comes ready fixed to a flexible glue layer which you then glue on where you want it. Now this is perfect for doing some of the really steep drops where really you're going to struggle to get any of the static grass to stick. So we talked a little bit about that around the other side where there's a steep slope, and this is the perfect substance to do that. We can also rip up any of the leftover pieces and dot them around as patches of really rough grass. When we do the static grass, they will then just blend in with everything else. So that's the plan for now. So this is the sheet that you get. I'm just going to finish folding it out So that's the amount that we've got to work with. And what I want to do first up is to just kind of get an idea of where I want it to go. And by the looks of it, if we trim it just past that crease, then that will give us the first piece to start working with. It's really easy to cut. You can actually rip it as well, and that's good if you want an irregular edge. Here though, I'm happy with a straight edge, so I'm just going to work this in, and what I then want to do is I'm going to turn it over, and then I've got some of that Deluxe Materials Speed Bond, which the reason I use this is it does set really quickly compared to regular PVA. So I've got that layer of the Speed Bond on, and all we're going to do here now is offer this up and just push this down and into position, and that Speed Bond that's on the back is going to just glue this into where we want it. And you can see that as the base for doing a grassed area, that is perfect. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go on, use more of this mat. I'm going to cover this area up here, fill in some of these gaps, and a little bit up here to the tunnel mouth. And I'm going to rip up the leftovers and just dot them around as little tufts of this light coloured, kind of burnt, dried out, yellowing grass. But it's the same process regardless of where you put it. Let's just work that glue in. And you can feel that it does actually take pretty quickly and easily. And because of the backing on this material, it follows the hard contours of your under terrain really easily. Any little bits like that we're going to fill in with some static grass and some scatter, and we're going to really work to blend this in. And believe me, it's not going to look all one uniform colour like this when we're done. The base layer is in, we've got all that done and dusted, and actually it already really does look good. So we're going to move on to the static grass, and it's going to start to bring a bit of depth to some of that colour that's on the layout. But first up, what I want to do is quickly lay down the path of the disused incline from the winding house that's already in at the top of the layout. And I'm going to do this really just by putting in a little sprinkling of ballast. That'll then get muted and dyed down with application of things like static grass, but it'll give that great suggestion of there having been other industrial things going on this layout, and gives another focal point of interest. So it really is quite simple. Simply what I want to do is spray down a bit more glue over the area, and then I'm going to just sprinkle a small amount of ballast up this area. It looks a bit wide, but don't worry too much about it, to be honest with you. It's something that it'll all work out in the end. So I'm just going to very carefully try and get a little bit of ballast into this area, and that will be absolutely fine. Again, a little bit more of the glue mix, and that gives us the suggestion of where the old incline was. It looks a bit garish at the moment, but once we mute that down with the static grass applicators, it'll be absolutely fine. So first up on that front, I'm going to use some of that Woodland Scenics Fine Turf and use the sprinkle side of things. This will just make this look a little bit less new. And then we're going to move on to the static grass application. So these are products that we've reviewed before on the channel from Warworld Scenics, and I think I'm going to start off with the Pro Grass Micro, and I've really enjoyed using these. It's opened my eyes to static grass application, it has to be said. And we're going to start loading it up, and actually I'm going to be using some slightly more interesting colours. I'm going to put in some brown, some burnt grass, just mix that up a little bit, put the top on, give it a shake, and then we also need to start spraying with the Warworld Scenic Static Grass Layering Spray the areas that we're going to start adding to. There's a misnomer that you need to stamp a nail into where you're working. It really doesn't need that, and anybody who is aware of physics and plus and minus static charges will know that's not the case. So I'm going to use myself as the ground, turn it on, and then away we go. And you see, everything suddenly starts to look quite brown and dark. Don't worry about that. This is the base layer. So I'm going to do a little bit over here. And you can see as well, some of this area, it just starts to give us those different colours, blending everything together. Which is what we wanted. We don't want that monoculture that I talked about. That has actually used up everything that we put in here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move up to a different colour, and I've got some 1mm green. So I am going to clip some of that in. And I like to mix different colours together actually in the static grass applicator. I think that gives you a much more realistic look. Don't mix it too thoroughly. You don't want a very uniform mix. We're going to go over this area again, over this area. This does give you a little bit of playtime to make sure you get it exactly how you want. But we don't want to hang about too much. And you see, boom, goes green. And we've got that base layer that we talked about, the brown. This just starts to bring out some colour. We can do any of these tight spaces with the Progress Detailer, but I'm quite happy with that actually. I don't want too much of this. There is a little bit left in there, but what I'm going to do now is I am going to add in some of the lighter colours. So I've got summer grass, and actually these are just in some of the Woodland Scenic Shakers. Autumn grass, I think, is the one that I want to go for. So I'm going to fill her up with this colour. And again, slightly longer fibres. Constantly thinking about fibre length. I think these are now 4mm rather than 1mm. So we'll start to get this different length of fibres turning up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to crack on, get all the different colours built up, and you'll really see a difference take shape on here. So come back when I'm done and you'll really see something special coming together. The static grass has really come together quite easily, and that's what I like about the Warworld Scenic Static Grass and applicators. I've used a combination of the 3 different applicators, from the Micro Detailer right up to the biggest, just to get the different effects, and always switching lengths of fibres, colours of fibres, trying to get that really nice natural blend. I've also used some scatters in there, used some of the flower kits as well. We tried the flower dressing kit on a previous video and it's worked out ever so well. And I'm just on now with this area. You can see where I've started to clean up the path where the water is going to go for the waterfall. Still needs a little bit more work, but then there's this bridge here. Now I've got the Wills kit sides ready to go on, but I also need to do some work on the abutments on this side. I've cut up some of the Scenecraft slate walling for this side, and I'm going to try and repeat that for the other, but I'm going to actually have to cut out a chunk of this plaster work, I think, so that that can all go in smoothly and still give enough room for the cast iron bridge sides to fit in and glue in. It's going to be tricky, but we can do that. And then that will leave us in a position where all that's left to do in this video is just scatter some of the Woodland Scenics underbrush. I've got a couple of different colours of that, and then also some bushes, and build us up to the point where we're ready in the next episode to deal with those cast rocks. I'll show you how to paint and stain those to make them look like real rocks, and we're going to be fitting those, and then we'll also be doing some tree making using some of the seagrass coupled with Warworld Scenics products. But that's pretty much where we're going to leave it for this episode. I hope you've really enjoyed this journey through turning what started out looking like a big lump of mashed potato into what now hopefully looks a little bit more like a slice of Welsh countryside or somewhere around the Festiniog Railway. But it's been great fun showing you this, and I hope that you've enjoyed it too. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and of course if you want to help support the channel and help us to keep making the videos that you want to see, you can check us out over on Patreon. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying take great care of yourself, happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Train-O-Matic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Trish Bits, Sparky 107107, George Botterini, Andy Finch, Chris Moss, Robert Sears, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grant Line Products, Sam Yates, and Dale Williams. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.